Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. And look, I've just been alerted that it's 5 years since COVID first hit the radar, and we were talking about it, and it changed a lot of what we do significantly. We changed a lot of the ways we do business, a lot of the ways we communicate with people. And there are a lot of new terms that came out. And there are also some older terms or older, methods, business processes that became magnified during COVID because they became more of a focus for us. And one of those key processes was supply chain. Supply chain became a big issue. We had huge delays, and suddenly supply chain was the hot topic. How do we manage it? How do we look for alternatives? How is it affecting our business? So supply chain became one of those magnified issues for businesses during COVID. But the reality is supply chain is an ongoing issue and something that needs attention of all business owners at all times. And it affects your ability to produce, your ability to sell, your cash flow, your profit. So it's quite critical to all small businesses. So we're privileged today to have the pleasure of welcoming Kerim Kfuri, and he's a distinguished thought leader in the field of supply chain management. So we're quite privileged to have him with us today. Over 2 decades of experience, he's made significant contributions to the industry through his innovation and practical insights. And he's also the author of a comprehensive guide, which we love, Supply Chain Ups and Downs. And we'll share the details of where to get a hold of that afterwards. But that delves into the intricacies of how we deal with cross-border trade, supply chain management. So Kerim's expertise, it's across a wide spectrum of industries, sectors, retail, entertainment, technology, so much more. He's also the host of the Supply and Demand podcast, which is also a great resource to check out after you finish listening to this episode. Kerim is constantly sharing his knowledge, expertise, and we're privileged to have him with us today. So, Kerim, welcome to The Business Behind Your Business.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate it. And I hope things are going well for you in Australia. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, so look, as I said, it's a privilege to have you with us today talking about a really, a key topic for a lot of business owners. And one, as I said, until COVID hit, a lot of people just sort of glossed over this whole process in their business and the impact on it. And, suddenly it got thrust into the spotlight as a big issue that we had to deal with. But I don't think that a lot of small business owners still actually understand what supply chain is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, 100% right. I mean, COVID brought the word or term supply chain to the common vernacular. Now we can't seem to go a day in the news without hearing about it, or one way or another, the impacts of it or aspects that impact it, from tariffs and duties to global affairs, sustainability, wars, politics, environmental concerns. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And the point being is that the supply chain is extremely critical to our economy, our global economy, and factors into the way that we get our goods and services every single day. It impacts consumers with regards to prices, with regards to availability of products. We all know the concept of supply and demand. Well, if you don't have a supply chain that works properly, then that whole entire concept of supply and demand gets disrupted or altered, could create scenarios of inflation, potentially even recession, and in worst case scenarios, even depression for economies. Businesses can go out of business. Unemployment can skyrocket. This is what happens when supply chains are not well managed. And when they are well managed, you obviously have thriving economies, and you have booms, and employment rises, and innovation dominates, and we progress as a society. So it's extremely important. And the reason why I think so many businesses or individuals don't fully understand it is because of its complexity. It is a complex dance of crossing continents. There are many facets or links within that chain that have to come together in sort of a perfect symphony. So you have that product on that shelf at the time you need it at a cost that you're willing to pay for it. And I talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about the entire supply chain. I wrote that book that you just discussed, a 150-page holistic view of the supply chain industry, to give people sort of a crash course and a perspective, a relatable voice as to this industry, why it's important, why they should know about it, why they should be aware of what's happening in the past, present, and in the future of this industry. So again, happy to be with you. Happy to talk about this topic and hopefully simplify as many of these concepts as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, we have this sort of like segmented view of what supply chain actually is, and a lot of people for particularly during COVID, the focus was on international shipping, delivery of supply of product from overseas, and also ability to export product. But supply chain management is such broader. There's so many more working parts, and we tend to focus on those big events. But like as you touched on, there are so many different influences on it. Like I'm thinking back to Australia, and everybody focused on COVID, but immediately before COVID, if we go back the 2 years before COVID, we had droughts, we had floods, we had bushfires affecting so many industries.
Sure.
Then we had COVID, and now there's something else, and there's something else, but we're in a global economy, so what's happening in other countries really affects your operations as well. It's hard to manage.
Absolutely. I mean, what happens on the other side of the planet can absolutely impact what you may be facing with regards to your supply chain. But more often than not, believe it or not, some of the biggest disruptions happen because of domestic issues or domestic challenges. So I'll give you a perfect example here. In the United States, with the many disruptions that were being faced in the supply chain, very few of them were with regards to manufacturing overseas. The real issue was with regards to workers, truckers, and port workers who were not able to report to work, were not able to basically get goods off of vessels, truck them to particular locations, thus creating a traffic jam that went all the way back to the other side of the planet. And that's really where you had the scenario because the transport and logistics side of the supply chain was very heavily disrupted with workers and mask mandates and people not able to go back to work for a long periods of time. So you'd look out in the ports of California or in New York and you just see container vessels just out in the seas, just floating out there for 2 months, 3 months at a time, stranded. And this is part of the supply chain, right? It's closer to the last mile of the supply chain, but it reverberates back all the way to no new goods can get on the water to then be able to be delivered because the current ones aren't being delivered first. We face that issue today in the United States with regards to port workers striking about labor and wages. And when they are going to do this, that again, goods can't get off of vessels, they can't get delivered to warehouses. And then companies such as like an Amazon that gets 70% of their goods from overseas and therefore through the ports, second largest company in the United States, faces major disruptions, right? You're talking about the second biggest company in the United States with 70% of their products attributable to coming through ports. So if you have a domestic issue, again, like a labor issue, or even, within Amazon, there were some workers that were looking to strike in their warehousing and fulfillment, which is not even ports, but that's just within their domestic warehouses. That's going to also disrupt the supply chain. It's going to disrupt what consumers get and so on. So we look at this and we think about it and say, supply chain, it must be a global issue. It's very, very common that a lot of the largest disruptions could be domestic issues. And that's the challenge of supply chain. There are these controllable factors, the manufacturing, the quality, the timeliness, these things that you focus in on during the manufacturing process and transport logistics side. But then there are these uncontrollable factors such as labor issues, pandemics, wars, political, force majeure, environmental scenarios that totally can wreak havoc. And that could happen domestically or overseas or any place along the supply chain.
Yeah. You mentioned like the Amazon workers striking, and it just sort of highlighted to me another issue. So we've recently had a similar issue with one of the major supermarket chains, Woolworths. having some industrial action in their warehouses. Now, the impact there was, okay, you couldn't go to Woolworths and get most of the products because the shelves weren't stocked. But if you were supplying to Woolworths, then you weren't able to sell because they weren't able to buy because they didn't have anyone to move the stock.
Right.
So what did you do with that as a business? Like, what do you do with that stock? Particularly if you're growing perishable products, you've got an issue there. But then if you're not able to sell your product, you're not buying from your customers, which might have an impact on your producer. So you're not buying from your suppliers, which might have an impact on them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the concept of inventory being a benefit and a curse, right? You know, there are these scenarios where you just can't get enough inventory, but at the same time, if you have oversupply of inventory, it could kill your cash flow. If it's a product like you said that's perishable items, you basically just have goods spoiling on the shelves or on the vessels because they have nowhere to go, no destination location. I mean, in those scenarios, obviously the producers of those products or the importers of those products need to have alternative locations to reroute goods to in those scenarios or face, again, major disruptions. I do not envy anybody who is really in the perishable goods industry because that is another area of complexity that just has to be managed, where it's not just about delivering goods, but you have to deliver it in a particular window. Otherwise, it just doesn't work at all. I think about things like bananas. You know, I was just in St. Lucia a little bit ago, and, you know, we're driving around. There are these banana trees with bags on them. And we started asking the farmers on what's the time horizons for this. And they say, you know, within a few days, these things have to be sprayed to maintain that they essentially can ship in time to arrive and not totally yellow or brown. And if it's of a particular color or not of a particular firmness, then supermarkets won't buy it. And it goes on and on and on. And I couldn't even imagine how you're operating on that razor blade of tolerances, and how if anything goes wrong on the water or with the crops or with, as you said, the buying and selling side of this, how, you know, those kinds of products could just be overly disrupted. You know, it's unimaginable to me, the perishable good market.
Look, I think every business has challenges, and perishable goods certainly have some unique challenges, which most business owners dealing with, like a non-perishable product or service, are not going to have. But look, we've mentioned it's a complex process, critical to business. How do we manage it? You know, what are the first steps that you should take when you're looking at your supply chain?
I mean, the reality of it is to properly manage supply chain is going to come down to processes and people, right? And when I talk about processes, we're talking about visibility, we're talking about transparency, accountability, many, many aspects that go to essentially the supplier selection process. That's the first step in the supply chain process, to ensure that you have a good supplier. Quantify, you know, from a quantitative standpoint, from a qualitative standpoint, managing that, measuring that, and not just that you have one, but that you have some backups as well. You've got supplier 2, 3, 4, and 5, because disruptions can happen at any time and for any reason. And if your business is reliant upon a third-party contracted situation, which the vast majority of businesses do when it comes to supply chain, you need to have alternative supply when things go wrong. And I even said when, because things will always go wrong a little bit. There's always a defect rate tolerance. It's just a matter on if it's too much to tip the scales. And then the other part of this process, outside of having, you know, kind of a good process, is people. If you've got great processes, but they're not followed by people, either it's QC inspectors or engineers or logistics folks or customs brokers, importation, trucking, shipping, warehousing, fulfillment, any of the people that are involved in the entire supply chain, it can fall apart. And that's why, you know, this idea around automation, you know, continues to reverberate through the supply chain as far as levels of efficiency and so forth. Not that we want to get rid of people, but what we want to do is we want to basically ensure that processes are followed in a consistent manner. And if the one of the areas of inconsistency is the human factor, then wherever we can look to enhance it, make it more efficient, or otherwise, we have to look at those things too to continue to make the supply chain operate in its most efficient stance. So again, it's processes, and within process, many steps, right? As I mentioned, and then the people to enforce or follow those good practices.
Yeah. So key components there: processes, people, and I just want to pick up one of the key words that you said there was when there's an issue, because I think a lot of business owners, particularly the ones I talk to, it's not going to happen to them, but the reality of it is there will be an issue at some point. How are they going to deal with it?
Absolutely. And that is a huge part of our business at the Atlas Network, that we facilitate for these businesses, these entrepreneurs who don't have the resources or knowledge set or capabilities, these small to mid-sized businesses, or even the large businesses that have faced some level of a disruption or are looking for some level of additional enhancement or efficiency to their process. In this case, they can't handle, or they don't want to manage, they want to delegate out that responsibility of basically looking after those issues as they come about, whether they're aesthetic or they're technical or mechanical issues. And who's going to be that entity that is going to service their needs, that is going to protect their interests? That's what we look to do as a liaison on their behalf. We never represent ourselves as the manufacturers, but we are the great communicators who essentially make sure that these goods are facilitated, that they follow a particular standard that has been set by a client, by industry standards, the right manufacturing, the right quality control, the right oversight management, logistics, customs clearance, delivery, the whole mechanism, really from A to Z. And that's something that we do every single day for these businesses.
And look, by you doing that every single day, you've become very, I guess, focused and skilled in what you do, and you're also aware of what the issues are, what the traps are, what the alternatives are, and when you see an issue, you've got multiple solutions available to you. Most small business owners, they're wearing so many different hats, and supply chain management is, unless they've come from that industry, that background, that's not going to be a skill that they've got. And
Correct.
What I hear from a lot is that of business owners, when an issue comes up, they don't have the time to deal with it properly, or they don't have the skill to deal with it properly. So, how would a business owner really work with, say, the Atlas Network or similar to get a better result for their supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it starts with a proper conversation and understanding the ins and outs of their business, their product, their SKUs, what have been their challenges of the past, what is their current infrastructure, how willing are they to modify that infrastructure, or is it a scenario of us plugging into their existing infrastructure to make it more efficient, better? And no two businesses are the same with regards to their benefits as well as their detriments. And so there's this consulting component to it at the very beginning, where we have to understand what's going right, what's going wrong, how it's been done historically, and how we can look forward. And if that is a matter of completely rebuilding supply chains, we do that. We start by a factory or a supplier selection process and prototyping and development, and then oversee manufacturing, quality control, and the entire mechanism. If it's a matter of just plugging into existing supply chains, it's how can we enhance the process? How can we bring additional levels of efficiency or transparency or visibility or quality where it's lacking or it's missing? So it really, case by case for sure, but it all starts with communication and having a firm understanding of what the areas of improvement could be, where the problem areas may exist, and how we can assist them with getting them to the next level.
Yeah. Look, I think that's a key skill that's missing. We talked about the importance of supply chain and the impact of it, but it's a skill that most business owners don't have to deal with. And one of the things I'm always pushing here, and you'll hear me say it all the time on the business behind your business, is that as a business owner, you're great at what you do, but you don't have the skills to do every aspect of your business, and you should be using the expertise of people who do have those skills to get you a better business result. So a supply chain, critical process, critical to business. Leave it to chance.
Absolutely. And the reality of it is that as entrepreneurs and small businesses, we have this tendency to want to just roll up our sleeves and get into everything. And that's fine. That's great. But in the end, what's your greatest asset? It's your time and your ability to essentially move the needle with regards to your business in scale and in growth. And so if it costs you an extra 50 cents or a dollar or whatever it may cost you, that's actually probably saving you tens of dollars of your own time and resources. Plus, it's being done properly by professionals who do it every single day and can probably service your needs much, much better. And when things go wrong, when they go wrong, you have a team or a group that can possibly bring you some recourse or bring you opportunities that you may not even know because you're not on the ground. You're not having those face-to-face conversations and communications every single day in a manner that can allow you to have negotiations that are proper. So, it's counterintuitive because we try to save pennies, but we may lose out on dollars or possibly even implode our businesses entirely because we just decided to just try to do it all ourselves. Delegation in the realm of supply chain is extremely important if you do not have the infrastructure to manage it.
Yeah. Look, I know I'm looking at most small, medium businesses. They don't have that infrastructure. They don't have the resources available or the manpower to do it in-house. And there's also that saying, which is very, very true, is that you don't know what you don't know. And if you are not skilled and trained in that industry, that process, there's a lot that you don't know. And I've had so many conversations after the event where unfortunately, you say, well, hang on, if we could have done this with you, we would have saved this consequence from happening, or we could have got you a better result. But you didn't know to talk to us about it. So, it's worth having that conversation. But I guess the first point for most small business owners would be to have gain a better understanding of what supply chain is, what are the ups and downs. So grab a copy of the book, Supply Chain Ups and Downs by Kerim Kfuri.
Yes, and the book is an interesting read. It starts with kind of the industry at large. Chapter 1 says, get ready for a bumpy ride. So you already know we're stepping into something that is not going to be kind of smooth sailing. We're talking about from the beginning that you should be ready to face adversity and challenges. It's going to be a part of it. And how do we get over it? Processes. How do we get over it? Best practices and good people and building it right from the beginning. And we go through this process of what you can encounter and how to look out for the challenges and when to dot the I's and cross the T's and ensure that, you really have a methodical approach to this. And the more methodical you are about it, the better the outcome will be. And it goes through this until the end of the book, where I then talk about things such as advancements in the space and sustainability. I talk about things such as nearshoring, and I talk about even, scenarios of AI and the future and how we're looking to continue to advance and take advantage of technology, but at the same time with guardrails, right? We need to basically still make room for computers and humans to work together collaboratively to get the best outcome. It's not just a, one and done or push the button. It still will be a people-centric operation. And with that in mind, we need to still make room for both technology and humanity to work hand in hand with each other. So I believe it's a holistic approach. And that's what I look to really kind of convey in the book and in all of the ways that I talk about supply chain.
Absolutely. So, Kerim, the best ways for people to I guess move forward with this, with managing their supply chain, options there. Get a copy of the book, which will share the link to how to purchase the book in the show notes and on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website. The podcast, share a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's called the Supply and Demand Show. It's about a year old. It's a very fun show with me and my co-host, Richard Crawford, who does not come from this industry, where we essentially interview leaders within the business space and specifically on topics around supply and demand and economics and supply chain. We've had folks from Alibaba and Chevron and large scale or DHL, large scale organizations. And we do this, in person on the show. We do it live at different events, supply chain related events that are happening across the United States and other places. And it's meant to be sort of a refreshing take around this industry, which for a long time has just been in the shadows, as you said, and overlooked. So we try to make it a little fun and interesting. So we have some fun with that show. And then outside of that, I have a very active LinkedIn page, YouTube channel, Instagram, so on, where there are these little kind of 30 to 60 second videos that go up pretty much every single day around various topics of the supply chain, everything to, how you get your cup of coffee every day and what's involved with that, to more complex economic ideas or discussions of tariffs or different kinds of trending topics that are happening in the news. And I think it's a good source to just try to humanize this very important industry that for a very long time people have not had an understanding about.
Yeah, that's great. So look, we're going to share all of those links, all that important information. Please do your business a favor, check out those resources, have a closer inspection of what your supply chain actually is, and prepare for the situations when there is an issue with your supply chain, not if, but when there is a supply chain issue. And look, come back, revisit this conversation. There's been a lot of key information, a lot of great suggestions and helpful advice provided by Kerim. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And thank you, Kerim, for joining us on The Business Behind Your Business.
Thank you, Paul. Great show. And thank you for the thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.